So I will call this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. We had a little bit of technical difficulties that have been addressed. The meeting of the CIC on July 28th, 2020. First, we'll start with a roll call.
Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Wallert.
Here.
Mr. Rajagopal.
Here.
Mr. Unger.
Here.
Jeff Mills, I am here. Mr. Iona.
Here.
Mr. McElravy.
Here.
Very good.
All right, and Mr. Solomon, as counsel, is with us. Mr. McElravy and Mr. Solomon are with us virtually. Next, we get item number 2. You've been provided with a copy of the CIC minutes from February 4th, 2020. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments regarding those minutes?
I think we need to motion and get it to the floor first. I would motion that we approve those minutes.
Okay, seconds.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Unger, a second by Mills. Are there any comments regarding the comments, changes, issues regarding the minutes as provided?
On page 3 of the minutes, there is a typographical error. Please change that to the motion carried.
Yes.
Okay, for a typographical error, I don't believe we need a motion. That's just a clerical change. Any other?
Jeff Mills, was that an issue on the, that's under next item, so we're good.
Okay.
I didn't see any other changes.
I saw one more typographical error under new business E. There's a forward slash in the second paragraph, third line before Mr. Mills. We can just remove that.
Okay. Any other comments?
None from me.
All right. Seeing none, we will call for a vote.
Should we have the secretary call the roll, do you think?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Certainly, I can do that, yes.
Sounds good. Yep.
Mr. Wallert,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Abstain. I was absent from the meeting.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. McElravy.
Aye.
That motion carries 4-0.
Did you vote, Mike?
4-0-1.
Do I vote on this?
Yep.
Okay, I vote aye as well. Well, I abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so I will abstain.
So that carries 4-0-2.
Very good.
I don't think you'll see that box score much in a meeting, but we'll go ahead. Moving on to number 3, new business. Motion to accept the 2019 financial report.
Yes, sir.
You want to provide an item report, and then we will then motion to bring it to the floor.
Sure. So each year we contract with a CPA firm to develop a financial statement for the year, financial report for the year. That report, which is provided in the agenda packet, provides a great deal of detail into the financials of the organization, and we then file it with the auditor of state and through the Hinkle system, and so that was produced and it was filed, and the recommendation is to accept this financial report.
Are there any motions at this time?
I'll move to accept it.
I will second it.
Motion by Mills, second by Unger, to accept the financial report as provided. Any discussion?
I have a discussion. This report is okay. Is for average people to it's very hard to read. There's a lot of financial report that we can use a format. A QuickBook has a balance sheet. Anybody can read. This seems to be a little bit complicated to read, understand. You practically have some kind of accounting background to understand this. I would suggest, I created for many years balance sheets and profit and the loss, P&L statements and everything. And we need to simplify these financial statements so that people could more understand these statements. I have a questions also, the page 4, you got operating revenue, contribution from township, $130,000, property received from township, $75,820, What is this, what property we received from?
That was the Community Resource Center on Colerain Avenue.
Okay, so that's a property we sold it?
Yes, we donated it to the CIC. The trustees gave it to the CIC,
Okay,
and then the CIC sold it. And I agree, this is very difficult to understand. This is actually the format that is required by the auditor, and this is a specialized financial report that is required by the auditor. You'll see in the next agenda item that we produce very clear-cut financial reports every quarter that detail every transaction. Hopefully that's easier to understand for the sort of accountant like me.
yeah. And secondly, if you look on the page 5, it goes like a short-term debt. During 2019, the corporation utilized the proceeds of a mortgage, $430,000, to purchase a property to be sold to Duke. The corporation also received a loan from Colerain Township in the amount of $400,000. So what's the $30,000 gap? Where their money come from to pay the mortgage? I think the township gave $400,000, and then the mortgage is for $430,000. So what's the $30,000 gap? How that money come from?
There, at our last meeting in February, which seems like a lifetime ago, I went through it was like a 2-page description of how that transaction occurred, and it details where the money came and where the money went to, and I can pull that up again.
No, you don't need, just tell me.
Yeah. Well, it was a complex transaction, which is why it took a whole lot of.
2 pages for one transaction.
Yeah. It was. But let me pull it up. It should be real easy to get to. Hang on just a second. I can go through that.
I will, my comment on this report is that it is developed by Plattenberg, and it is required by the auditor. And that said, it is noted in the header on this report that it is unaudited, which means this has not been audited yet.
Right. Okay, so hang on just a second.
And once we get through with it, then it would be audited at some point by the state.
Yep, every 2 years, and we're actually in the middle of our CIC state audit right now. So, okay. So I've got it here. Oh boy. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Okay, so. Okay, well, almost.
For those of you watching at home,
That's
this can be
okay,
found on the
Jeff. You
transparency
got just-
portal.
Yeah.
Just summarize or something, that'd be okay. I just,
Okay, I do want to make sure that I get it right, so.
For those that have been driving by the Duke Energy site, it looks like it is almost ready for occupancy. I'm not sure when, but a lot of the work's done. The trees are planted. It seems like all the concrete flat work's done. The fence is up. The buildings are being finished out. I think it's really going to be a real gain for the township.
It does, it looks good.
Yeah, but I need to head down there and have a look.
Would it be okay if I gave that presentation again at our next meeting? I know that.
no, just if you can, in a nutshell, you don't need to do the whole detail, just kind of worried.
I know how much the words at these meetings are scrutinized, and I don't want to get it wrong, and so
Yeah.
I do recall the very detailed explanation you gave at the last meeting, Jeff.
Okay, that's fine, Jeff.
Okay.
Additional comments?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
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 None from me.
Then I got one more question to you guys.
Yes, sir.
I know. Go back to page 4. You gotta comes under the total non-operating expenses. Net position beginning of the year, $38,016. The changes in net position, $37,124. That adds up to $76,140. That's starting with the 2019.
The end of 2019, we were at 76,140, and at the end of 2018, we were at 36.
39,000.
Yeah, 39,016. Yeah.
Okay, that's from the change in net positions in 2019, 30,124. Then you carry the 20,018, $39,016. That adds up. So right now, so this $76,140 will carry to 2020.
Was at the end of this year, right? Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
All right.
At the end of last year. Yes. I apologize that I couldn't put my
No,
finger on that
not at all.
immediately.
Mr. Roger Paul, any other additional comments?
Yeah. So I'd like to, even though you're going to submit this to auditors, how there's a format they like to post more like for our transparency.
Yeah.
The people can understand separate type of clear, like balance sheet, regular, like QuickBook format, easy to
Yeah.
read.
So hopefully, our next agenda item will get you what you want, which is a very clear understanding of debits and credits. It's just, it's like transactional, like this is what went out, this is what came in. That's our next agenda item, hopefully.
Good.
So,
Thanks, Jeff.
sure, yep.
Mr. Unger?
I have no other comments, Matt.
For my own?
I have no comments.
Mr. McElravy?
No comments.
Okay. All right, at this point, we'll go ahead and take a vote.
All right, we have a motion to accept the 2019 financial report. Mr. Waller,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. McElravy,
Aye.
and Mr. Iona votes aye. Motion carries.
Motion carries, 1, 2, 3, 6, 0. Yeah.
0.
That's St. X math at work. All right, item B, motion to accept 2020 first and second quarter financial statements. Are there any motions at this time? Or let me get an item report, Mr. Mills.
Sure. So hopefully this is exactly what you're looking for, Mr. Rajagopal. This is a quarterly report that Mr. McElravy puts together, and it details, and we talk about transparency, this details every single transaction that the CIC engages in, and I would tempt the board to go look for another CIC that publishes this level of detail. I mean, every single transaction, and then it has the amount, the vendor, the category, the purpose, and when, even when the check cleared. So the first bit of information here is on page 16. That's our register of activity. You'll notice at the top right of that document, it shows the book balance at the end of every single month. So you can kind of get a sense of cash flow and what's coming in and out. And then the next and subsequent pages are month-by-month transaction reports. So you've got the cleared transaction, the book balance, the bank balance, and those things are reconciled to how much money we have at the end of every single month. And so we try to present those every quarter at each of our meetings to give you guys a sense of what the transactions are and where we sit financially. So at the close of 6/30/2020, our book balance and our bank balance were reconciled at $74,091.68. So my recommendation is to adopt a motion accepting these financial statements.
Are there any motions at this time?
Motion that we accept the statements.
Seconds.
I'll second.
Motion by Unger, second by Mills to accept the financial statements for quarter 1 and quarter 2 2020 as provided. Any discussion?
Yes, Jeff Mills, in the detail, on May 4th of this year, there's a payment to Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, and on May 25th, there's a $26.91 payment to Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. The first one was $115.01, and those are both for 7580 and 7560 Colerain. Is that the last two meter readings, all for the
Yes.
property that we transferred earlier?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't believe I have any other comments.
The only thing we've spent money on so far this year is our insurance, the accounting, and those 2 water bills. That's all we've spent money on.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns regarding Q1 and Q2 2020 financial statements? Seeing none, we do have a motion in front in a second to accept, so we'll move to roll call vote.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the 2020 first and second quarter financial statements. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. McElravy?
Aye.
And Mr. Iona votes aye. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you very much. Item C, motion to authorize additional $500 payment to Plattenberg and Associates.
Yes, sir. So I believe it was last year we entered into an agreement with Plattenberg. There was an issue with our previous accounting firm that led us to want to change accounting firms. We looked around to see who does this type of work well and ended up with Plattenberg. They gave us a contract that said that they would create that financial statement for a price not to exceed $1,600. The transaction that occurred last year with the Fireside took a great deal of time for them to parse through. And so he reached out and said, hey, we've got more hours into this than we expected. Would you be willing to pay an additional $500 because, you know, this was way more than what we expected. And given that he produced that document in a very clear and understandable way to to CPAs, and that it covered our reporting requirements, I felt like it was the right thing to do to put this on the agenda and recommend the payment of an additional $500 to cover their expenses to produce that report. There was a note that I received from Kathy Moore asking why we, I believe that she misunderstood that this work was done in 2019. This work has been done in 2020. So, and we have not been invoiced for it. It's coming to you for authorization. So the recommendation from staff is to authorize an additional $500 payment.
I got a similar email from Kathy Moore, why we're doing now.
Right.
So I'm glad you explained that.
Any motions at this time?
I'll motion to authorize the additional payment to get it to the floor because I will have a question.
All right, motion by Unger, any seconds?
I'll second.
Second by Mills. All right, discussion.
In the check register, it looks like there's a $250 payment and a $300 payment. So do they need 500 or do they need 550?
No, they, in the check register, there are a number of progress payments that were made to
Okay, so
Plattenberg.
that's not related to this.
That's right. So that adds up to the $1,600 that we are contracted with them for. And so the $500 would be an additional $500 on top of the $1,600, which is still, given that we did a very complex transaction that ended up, it was a $430,000 transaction. They had to explain that to the auditors, and that's why. So
And
seems fair.
I'd like to make another comment. You mentioned an email from Kathy Moore.
Mm-hmm.
I have, our next meeting is our regular trustee meeting, and this email references this meeting.
Right.
And it's pretty short. I know I'm a few minutes late. Please respond to my question, but I'd like to know why the $500 expense for Plattenberg was incurred in December 2019. It's just now asking in July for this expenditure. It should have been approved prior to the incurred expense. This is becoming too common that terms of contracts are not followed. Thank you, Kathy Moore. This printout copy that you gave me, because I request copies from you so that I can read our citizen input during these COVID times. But I noticed it was only sent to Raj Rajagopal and Matt Wallert, and I was not copied on the email for whatever reason. And I don't know why I was left off of it. But, and I've always asked any citizens, please do not send emails to the three of us, because you could be, generating an electronic meeting if one of us would respond. But I'd have to say, especially, don't send one to just two of us, because that leaves one of us out, and I find out about this stuff when I show up, when Kathy's left one of us out of the email. So please send emails to the trustees individually. So that would be my two comments.
Sure.
So, Mr. Mills, what exactly does our contract cover with Plattenberg and Associates? And when will it require additional payments? And I mean, I get their point, but it doesn't seem like that was in the contract.
It was not.
And it seems like if they're experts in that they, I guess, was this such a one-off that neither one of us expected this?
Right.
So in future, I guess I don't like the ad hocness of it. In future, we would probably talk to them in advance and say, look, we've got this thing, it's a little bit more complicated. How much would you charge us for? Is that, or how's this done? I don't know.
Sure. So looking at I'm looking at the contract right now, and it says that we've negotiated fees for service through December 31st, 2022. There's a slight escalator. It's $1,600 for 2018, $1,600 for 2019, $1,700 for 2020. And I think that the point here is that it was they put more time into it than they expected, and I think that it's good business to pay people for the time that they put into it. And I understand that this was the largest transaction that we've ever transacted. This was the largest project that we've ever done. If they were looking at our history, they would never see a project even close to this. And so they're probably presuming that we would continue on the trajectory from 2013 to 2017, where we didn't do things like this. But
and I don't disagree at all. I want them to get, going forward, is there something that we need to kind of take into account if we're going to be doing additional?
Sure.
And I guess, I think it's fair that to both parties that we have that kind of laid out.
Sure. So you're thinking maybe have an additional paragraph in our contract that says something like, if additional work is required, then this is the process that we follow,
Right.
kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just so that it's not kind of like, I don't believe they took advantage of it. I don't believe we took advantage of them. I think it's fair, but as they say on Pawn Stars, that's not that I don't trust them. I don't trust anyone.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Very good.
I
I'll work
believe
with
that
them.
Big Hoss says that.
Yeah, I'll work with them to get an addendum to the
Okay.
contract and bring it.
And I'm not being negative at all. I'm just saying I think that's a good policy to kind of. But who would have known that we would have gotten a big Duke Center, and we wouldn't want $500 in accounting fees to stand in the way.
Yep.
Well, and that said, if our folks from Plattenberg are watching, I appreciate you taking us on as a customer, because we're probably your most scrutinized customer, and you're liable to get follow-up questions and emails that should come to us but probably come directly to you, that you will not be compensated for the time in answering those emails. So I understand you're needing extra money to cover the extra time, because I want to be a better customer for you, and I don't want you to just brush Colerain Township Community Improvement Corporation aside, because there are times that you get an awful lot of follow-up questions that don't necessarily come through the members of this board. So I'm fine with the additional $500 payment, because I'm sure they have more time in it than they're billing us for.
Additional comments?
None.
So we have a motion to authorize an additional payment of $500 to Plattenberg and Associates. Mr. Weller.
Aye.
Mr. Unger.
Aye?
Mr. Rajagopal.
Aye.
Mr. Mills.
Aye.
Mr. McElravy.
Aye.
And Mr. Iona votes aye. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, next item is kind of a discussion of the mission, purpose, and membership of the CIC, which I've put together. Being out of the classroom now for 6 months, I just had a hankering to do a PowerPoint, so.
Hopefully there's more reason than that, Matt, but I appreciate you taking the time to put this together.
And we'll see how it comes across, because my cut and paste skills are not that good, but see, there's a cover slide for the Colerain Township Community Improvement Corporation. So I just want to go into a little bit of background, because I think that there's kind of a mysticism, a mystery about the CIC and what it's designed to do. Historically, what the role of the state has been. And again, this is the history nerd in me talking, so I'll keep it short. But the state of Ohio has been involved in economic development from the time of statehood. We got involved with turnpikes, canals, railroads. All these were reasons to try to grow the economy, try to bring goods to market, try to increase market size, try to increase the size of the economy. Both direct and indirect economic development. Everybody knows the story of, wherever you hit a stop on the railroad, a town would sprout up, or wherever Cincinnati was Porkopolis because of the river traffic of pork and things like that. This was economic development. Well, it got a little bit turned backwards in the 1800s, and by 1851, and this kind of corresponds with Andrew Jackson, who was president until 1836. But until 1851, that's when there became kind of a pushback to open development opportunities for more people, to democratize capitalism more. So that era was about getting more people involved, and there was a feeling as if the economic development that occurred previous to 1851 was just designed to get the rich richer. And this opened things up, and the state and the local governments could no longer own stock in private firms. It shut it down, so it shut the economic development down. That stood that way for over 100 years till 1961, when it was the DeSales Rhodes governor race, which everybody, of course, remembers that, I think. The CIC was created as a vehicle to bring more jobs to the state. It was a legislative creation, and that was the Rhodes campaign thing: jobs and development. By 1963, the ODD was created, Ohio Department of Development, and ODFC, Ohio Department of Financial, I don't know what the C stands for. By 1964, it was found unconstitutional because this was government assisting with private firms, and it was against the Ohio Constitution. So in 1965, they made an amendment to allow this to be done by a nonprofit. And that's the key with this, the nonprofit being that there aren't people in the back room making profits off of this relationship between essentially what was an early version of a public-private alliance, or government getting helping with development with businesses. In 1965, House Bill 941 created CICs. Now we have over 300 plus in Ohio. And these are nonprofits to serve as agents of local governments. And what the bill says is they acquire, construct, enlarge, improve, or equip, and to lease, sell, lease, exchange, or otherwise dispose of property, structures, equipment, and facilities. So it's a pretty broad charge, but basically what it is it's about bringing economic development in what Ohio and the legislature and the ODD, Department of Development, kind of found out in the after to the Ohio Department of Development is, let's do this stuff locally because local folks know more. And it's a quasi-governmental, and this is where, if you go ahead to the next one, this is where people, I think, criticize a lot the CIC. How do we limit the power? How do we know how far the CIC can go? Well, there's some pretty specific guidelines and boundaries on the CIC, specifically regulated by the ARC 1724. The Ohio Attorney General has the Economic Development Manual, which I think is massively large, and there's a chapter, I say a chapter, I don't mean a chapter like 8 pages, I mean a chapter like that, on CICs and the role that they can play. So that's another guidebook. The CIC needs to file articles of incorporation, which you can go pull those up from the Secretary of State's website. I did for this meeting. In the articles of incorporation, if you ever looked at these for any corporation, normally it's like 3 sentences or a page. But for the CIC, it's like 7 or 8, 9 pages long because there's very specific boundaries on what you can and can't do. That needs to go to the Secretary of State. It's reviewed by the Ohio Attorney General. So at this point, when we're talking about limitation of power, how much leeway does this organization have? Well, we've already have the ORC, we have the Economic Development Manual, we have the Articles of Incorporation okayed by the Attorney General. Then we have a Code of Regulations, and you can find the Code of Regulations under the Transparency Portal on our website, and the Code of Regulations is 10 or 12 pages long, and this lays out everything that can be done on our CIC. Then we have a written operations and fiscal management document for the day-to-day procedure. What can you invest in? How can you invest in it? What can you do? What are the processes that you take? These are all the guiding documents. Many of them repeat a lot of the same information so that it reinforces what the boundaries are. So in other words, we can't take the CIC money and go buy a Chick-fil-A, although that would probably be a wonderful investment. I joke all the time, Chick-fil-A is an ATM machine, but you can't go do that, for instance. The township also must authorize CIC as an agent through the resolution of Board of Trustees, and this details the specific functions. And the most latest and you could pull this up online too, is from 2014, which again, resolutions are 2 or 3 pages long. This one's like, I don't know, 8 or 9. It lists specifically all the things that the CIC can do. So when we talk about criticisms as to what are the limits of its power, I think there's a belief that the CIC can do whatever it wants. No, there's a lot of guidelines. There's a lot of limits to what they can do. The second thing often heard, complaint or criticism, is transparency. If you get to the next slide on transparency. And I remember campaigning for this and telling people the CIC, I'm a CIC salesperson. I believe it's the single most important vehicle for economic development in a township. I firmly believe that, and I've seen that work out in many townships. Mr. Mills and I have talked about Boardman Township, which does things that nobody else even tries. You know about Boardman too. The CIC must file an annual report with the Ohio Auditor of State, and that's in fact what we talked about tonight. We're subject to potential audits, and I think we're going through our semi-biannual.
Yeah, every 2 year.
Yep. With very limited exceptions, and those exceptions you could probably guess is, it's not sunshine law to say, hey, how much is the CIC going to offer for that property? Because that would kind of hurt the negotiating leverage. But with very limited exceptions, the CIC is subject to Ohio sunshine law and Ohio public record law. Those have to be provided, just like a trustee meeting. And at least 40% of the CIC Board of Directors must be elected appointed officials of Colerain Township. And how I link that to transparency, if you don't think we're being transparent about it, vote us out. That's the ultimate form of transparency, is just get someone else in there. In Colerain, we also have Open Gov at the transparency portal, and we have Waycross, who's here tonight recording and records these as well. So that we have, you can go back and watch them at your leisure. All right, so that's one of the other issues, transparency. So as these things developed, especially in the 1970s, this is when it became really big with land banks. And this, I think, would be, in my view, one of the first things that maybe we could look at as a CIC, is land reutilization programs. So since 1970s, CICs can acquire, in fact, they have the first right to acquire vacant and tax delinquent property from Hamilton County at cost. It's a 30-day window. And the reason I talk a lot about this is it's a program that we successfully used when I was at North College Hill on their CIC to start just scooping up dilapidated and problem properties. We had one, I will never forget, that the inside was so toxic with bird droppings that we had to bring in environmental services to remediate it. Talk about being a detriment to that street and that neighborhood. This is how we kind of can fix some of these things. I know as a matter of a point of fact, I received a call this week about a specific house in that same situation. And I'm like, well, now COVID throws a wrench in things, but these are things in the CIC we can do. And not only can we buy that property, the state of Ohio typically provides funds to demo it. With the philosophy of let's make it property that's going to produce income in form of tax revenue for everyone. Why buy? Return it to productive economic uses. Create a beneficial public use. Maybe turn it into a neighborhood garden or something like that. That's certainly permitted as well. And eliminate any kind of blighted, troubled property. So this is one thing we can do through the land bank. Now, I don't know how many Colerain Township properties are at that point in the land bank now, but again, based on my experience in North College Hill, we got it to the point where it's about 1 every 2 months, and that's in a community of 10,000. So that's one route we can go with it. So I just wanted to provide this kind of as a background, just a little bit of kind of how I envision the CIC moving into kind of being a more involved economic unit. I mean, we did one deal last year and we're up 76,000. It's amazing how when you buy these things at cost, what they're like $6,000, $8,000 for a piece of property, and you sell it, you don't even need to worry about selling it to the highest bidder because you're the CIC. You get the best purchaser. Maybe it's a neighbor that wants to expand and put the deck there and a pool, or maybe it's maybe it's somebody who's and I know there are folks here in Colerain that have torn down and rebuilt properties there and have done a great job at it. These are all examples of things we can do, and the money we get goes back into the CIC. Now, there are other ways to fund the CIC. I mean, it's a nonprofit, so you can actually solicit contributions. The township can make donations, but I'm not asking any of that. And also the township, the CIC can be hired out as well. Nothing that we would ever do, but for example, the equivalent of a CIC in College Hill is very active in contracting out with people because they've done a great job and people want them. And said, hey, if you've been watching College Hill, they're just putting up another new building. So this is a nice, positive way to kind of impact change and get the ball rolling on a lot of the problems that we hear week after week after month after month after month. I mean, the CIC can create a position, even if it wanted to, that cleans up commercial property. It can do that. And that employee is not an employee of the township. It's an employee of the CIC. So as long as it's transparent, there's a lot we can do. So for discussion tonight, to kind of get us started, the first meeting I asked for applications for people. I wanted to have more representation from the community, and we've gotten, I think, 5 applications. How should the board be consistent? Who should be on the board? There's a school of thought out there that I've talked to a lot of citizens that feel that the only 3 votes should be the 3 trustees, which I get that. However, what the CIC does is essentially a recommendation anyway. You could vote 6-0, and the 3 of us could decide next meeting on a whim, hey, we don't like that anymore, and we could vote it down, which, I don't know, we could likely do, who knows? Who votes? Do we want an executive committee? Because the CIC itself meets on such a limited basis, you're allowed to form an executive committee under the ORC, but it does have to, you do have to apply with the sunshine laws and open records requests and things like that. Resolution 114, does it reflect our goals? There's a lot of stuff in there that we don't do that are shalls. Like the first one is, or the second or third one was creating a list of properties. We haven't done that. I'm sure we can just go to Hamilton County and do that, but I think that we need to go through that resolution and make sure that we're matching what our mission is with what the resolution is, and what is our mission. So that's my kind of brief, not so brief PowerPoint kind of explanation as to where I'm looking for this to go. And I guess I would just open it up now for discussion and get some kind of reaction and feel like what kind of directions we want to go.
I would, go ahead, Raj.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I would say Hamilton County has a list of properties. I've seen the list. At the last time I looked, there were 2 properties that were in Colerain Township on the list. And that's one of the discussion items. And then how should the board be consisted? I think the current composition is good. I would take 1 more person just to make it an odd number of people, and that could be 1 community representative. I don't think I'd want to get any bigger than 7, because bigger committees, 7's pretty good sized committee for the specific purpose of what we're trying to do is obviously the Duke Energy project. We can use the CIC as a mechanism to help us get to the point where we are now, and I can't wait for the ribbon cutting there. I'm sure it's coming up hopefully in the next few months, but so I'd be fine keeping it at the 6 we have plus 1 more, and using it for the specific purpose of acquiring various properties and helping to consolidate parcels so that somebody like Duke would be able to get the property from the former Western Home Center Builders First Source, the Fireside property, and the old Grossbeck Tavern property. And then CIC was instrumental in putting those together, and the end result is we've got this nice, almost completed project there. So I'm fine sticking to that specific purpose, that along with a few houses here and there that we've like the Pippin Road property, which is now, almost completed with what that new owner's doing with it. And so those are my comments for now.
Thanks, Dan. Howard, I would recommend, like Matt said, thing, having type of diversity group in our board. We have enough of our staff here. You administrator, zoning administrator there. We got the finance director here. Like Matt said, at the end of the day, the trustees makes the final decision. Now, having said that, the reason for having the diversity group here, I'd like to have the business chamber guy, the president of the Colerain Township, Colerain Business Chamber, because we like to connect them, involve them, our business chamber, with this group is very vital. Also, one citizen's got a intensive background in the business sector, like that. And then one person would be a community action group, somebody who really involved in the community. They know the needs of the community or township. I'd like to add, there were 3 more people. And other hand, I had one person in my mind. He was a businessman, and also mentioned his name to Jeff also, Jeff Mills. His accounting experience, and he's got a passion for our township. And he's got a lot of people in the business circle. He's got a lot of very talented guy. He's retired. We can use him, and also bring somebody from the citizens who involve actively in the community. They understand the need of our community. So I would suggest. I know Dan thinks this board may getting bigger. At least we have a diversity group from people from different sector, and they have their own input, and it will be beneficial for the future of this CIC. And we got a lot of work to be done. Like we see that Northgate Mall is empty. We need to work on that, and so many things going up. A lot of business going out of business. So this will be a vital target. Key things that CIC could utilize.
I think at this time, one of the issues with having 9 until the governor changes our rules, that's going to put us at the limit of who we could have in the room. Mr. McElreevy's on the screen, which is good. I know that time-wise, we're got about 10 or 12 minutes left. If it pleases the chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion to get it to 7, the 6 of us plus 1 more, and see if there's anybody interested in seconding that, and then we can talk about adding on to that. So I would motion that the board is consisted of the 6 existing members plus 1 more person to be selected by the agreement of the board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Unger and a second by Mills to increase, and I take it that this is not a permanent, this is a get started kind of thing, or just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, just to see what it looks like with 7.
Yeah.
So that's for the discussion part. That's what I would like to do.
Okay, discussion.
So when you add the people 1 more, they make like a 7. Is it going to be a permanent charter of the CIC?
So historically, the way that this works has been there are 3 members. Remember, we went through this in February, which seems like a long time ago. But there are 2 different types of trustees, right, to the board. There are the township trustees are one type. And really, when you think about the CIC is nothing more than an economic development arm of the township government. So there are 3 township trustees, got to be 3 township trustees. Then, in the past, what has happened is you all have, the Board of Trustees has saw fit to have 3 staff members because those people have jobs to do as part of the CIC. So there's an executive director, a treasurer, and a secretary. Those have typically been staff members. And then there have been 1 to have a round number. There have been 1 person in the community that has a passion and can bring some expertise to the matter. So typically we've been at 7, and that has worked well. You can add or subtract it's up to you guys.
And I had a discussion with Mr. Solomon about this morning. I hate to use this comparison, but it can be like the congressperson from D.C. or the UN representative from the PLO. You can have a non-voting kind of member. I know the PLO.
Yeah.
I wish I could have done better, but I couldn't at the time. But it can be a non-voting member, because one thing that I've found is kind of important to have in the room too, in addition to like other stakeholders like school board or business chamber, are bankers.
Sure.
Because they know how to find the money. I mean, if we can develop a relationship with like Huntington is always big with community kind of thing. You get them there because they know where the federal money is, they know where the state money is, and they know how to hook you up with that. And oftentimes it's good to have a lawyer, because they know things that none of us in this room really know. But at the same time, you need to have, you need to have the average citizen that looks at it and says,
Scott's rolling his eyes. He's like, lawyers don't know anything. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
you have to have the average citizen too, because they're like, wait a second, that isn't going to work. They know the common sense stuff that none of us know. They're like, that's a terrible idea, and you're like, oh. So, I'm for adding one, but I'd like to explore. Again, I get the unwieldy part, and I don't want the place getting busted by the governor, and all of us getting thrown in jail.
Now, the other thing, Mr. Wallet, that I'll just throw out there is that you had mentioned College Hill, and the tool that they're using in College Hill and in many neighborhoods in Cincinnati is not exactly a CIC, it's called a CDC.
Right.
It's a Community Development Corporation, and so and they have two different roles, right? And so, one of the things that I agree with you, I think that CDCs would be great to have in Colerain Township, and I continue to hope that that folks like a Greater Northbrook and a Greater Groesbeck continue to move down the path of becoming a CDC, because I think with additional capacity in those organizations, they could do great things, just like we're seeing in College Hill. But I don't want to confuse the role of a CDC and the role of a CIC. We really are just set up at this point to buy and sell property. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just really like to echo Mr. Mills' point. The CIC is really set up to be a nuts and bolts operation kind of entity, and I think having a group that is more community oriented in a CDC framework makes a lot of sense. The second thing I want to add, I just don't want it to be lost, that there are land bank efforts that are underway in the township now that are happening through the Hamilton County Land Bank, which is organized by and managed by the Port Authority. And there may be advantages to doing it ourselves, but they do have a bunch of tools that they bring to the table from the beginning of the recognition of the problem through demolition and environmental remediation through disposition. And those are things that we would need to stand up in order to be able to perform that function on our own.
That's a good point.
Jeff McElreevy, what was your experience with Cincinnati in these things?
Sure. So I spent a little over 11 years working in economic development for the city of Cincinnati in a variety of roles, sometimes in a neighborhood context and sometimes working on some of the projects that you would read about downtown. We did a lot of partnering with the Port Authority and with 3CDC to put together the resources that are necessary in order to be able to fix these kinds of problems. It often takes a whole bunch of partners, and a CIC, to Mr. Wallet's point, is a fantastic tool for accomplishing a good chunk of that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to expand one, with, we can revisit that.
That would take it to 7.
Discussions?
Well, we've got Mr. Unger asked for a 2-minute break. I've got 6:53.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can table that. I guess My intent on this, you guys are going to kill me, was to call for another CIC meeting at 6 o'clock before the next trustee meeting, if we're able.
Right now, we've got the Tax Incentive Review Commission meeting at 6 on the 11th, but we could do the meeting after that.
Okay.
I would suggest, my opinion is, you got an essential staff here, 6 people, where, you all experts in the townships, and we need to have 3 non-voting people. I don't care, having 3 members, add 3 members, which is, like I said, the people from different background, which will be, they can serve, but there won't be, we can give them a non-voting power, but they will be part of that discussion, part of the suggestions, part of the proposals, and still our 6 people will act on that, whether they like it or disregard it, like that. So that's my thoughts.
Well, and if we can go ahead and take the vote on this, then we might be able to have that other person ready for this next meeting that you're calling for.
Yep. You want to call? We'll call for a vote then.
Okay.
So it's a motion to expand the board from membership of 6 to 7 with 1 non-voting member? or-
That 7 would be voting because we need a
Okay.
tiebreaker.
Okay, excellent. A motion to expand the board from a membership of 6 to 7, all voting members. I'll call the roll. Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Rajagopal?
No,
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. McElravy?
Yes.
Mr. Iona votes yes. Motion carries 5-1.
Okay, and I do have, I don't know, nobody's looked at the applications, I don't think.
I have. I've seen them, but yeah. So if folks, I would encourage folks that want to be involved to fill out an application, and we'll.
Can I go over the applications we have now, who's applied? So,
excuse me, what's the deadline?
There's no deadline.
yeah, so Ryan Mannering, I think he lives out in Pleasant Run region, I think, has applied. Linda Goggle from, I think, Groesbeck, is that right, Groesbeck? Mr. Zaz, who I think lives back in my neighborhood, back in Cobble Chase kind of area. Ron Roberto, who's Groesbeck. Stephanie Wright, who's White Oak? Is that White Oak? Yeah. These are the applications that we have so far, so I don't know if anybody wants to motion, or if we hold off, or if we just hold off till the next meeting on, and I know that some of this stuff that probably I need to talk to Mr. Mills, Mr. Ryan, and Mr. McElravy about, kind of what I've sketched out, and we can get a little bit more specific so that I can have some more to present, and we can move on from there. So at this time, I'll entertain any of those motions. A motion to have the meeting on the 25th at 6 p.m. Would be appropriate. A motion to put one of these people as the 7th would be appropriate, or?
I haven't had a chance to look at the applications yet, so I'd rather bring forth, if we all look at the applications, we could discuss them at the next meeting and pick somebody at the next meeting.
Okay.
I didn't get that application. Would you forward that to me, please?
I can do that too.
Okay. So I don't know that we need a motion, but then we will meet on the 25th at 6 p.m.
But that would be a special meeting. I think we'd probably have to set.
We do
that.
have a motion then.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will motion that we meet on the 25th at 6 p.m. to continue this organizational structure. Are there any seconds?
I'll second it, but it would be, I'll let Jeff second. It would be just to have another meeting, to have a special meeting. It wouldn't be to continue anything from this meeting. It would be its own agenda.
Right, because we have to give actual notice and special meeting notice on that. So we have I motion, and I don't know, did Mr. Iona, I think, seconded, or did Mr. Iona?
Mr. McElravy seconded it.
Okay, Mr. McElravy seconded. We'll go ahead and call for a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion to establish a meeting for the CIC on August 25th. That would be at 6 p.m.
And that's a Tuesday?
That's a Tuesday, yes. Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. McElravy?
Aye.
Mr. Iona votes aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Right, any other motions at this point?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mills, any seconds?
I'll second it.
Second by Unger.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned at 6:58. We will be back in, we'll give it a 2 to 3 minute break here. So that
Okay,
people
great.
can
Thank
use
you.
the restroom.